Good morning to all. This is Dr. K. Malla Reddy, Associate Professor of Telugu, SRR Government Arts and Science College, Karimnagar. Today I am going to discuss about the International Decade of Indigenous Languages in this video. The International Decade of Indigenous Languages IDIL 2022 to 2032. It has been proclaimed by the United Nations General Assembly in its resolution. With the action plan of the UNESCO, the UN General Assembly has proclaimed the period from 2022 to 2032 as the International Decade of Indigenous Languages. The main aim of the decade is that it aims to ensuring indigenous people's right to preserve their languages, revitalize their languages, and promote their languages. The UNESCO has started so many action plans to draw the global attention on the critical situation of many indigenous languages and to mobilize stakeholders and resources for their mainstreaming linguistic diversity and multilingualism aspects into the sustainable development efforts. So the UNESCO has established this proclaimed along with the UN General Assembly as the International Decade from 2022 to 2032 to preserve, revitalize and to promote the indigenous languages, to develop their languages, to give importance to the languages, to revitalize their languages, to revitalize their culture, to revitalize the knowledge which is there among the indigenous languages. And the United Nations Permanent Forum has been established in 28th July 2000, which deals with the indigenous issues related to the economics and social development, culture, the environment, education, health and human rights of the indigenous people. It also provides expert advice and recommendations on indigenous issues to the Council as well as to programs, funds and agencies of the United Nations through Economic and Social Council. This United Nations Permanent Forum, which has been established in 2000 in July 28, it provides so many opportunities to the indigenous people and indigenous languages to protect and to preserve them. It prepares and disseminates the information on indigenous issues. It promotes respect for and full application of the previous UN declarations. In the previous years, the UN has also declared the 2019 as the International Year of the Indigenous Languages. It has been taken so many activities on the basis of the output of the 2019 International Year of the Indigenous Languages. Further, it has been proclaimed the International Decade to develop, to make efforts to develop for the sustainable development of the indigenous people. Who are indigenous people? The indigenous communities, peoples and nations are those which having a historical continuity with pre-invasion and pre-colonial societies that developed on their territories, consider themselves distinct from other sectors of the societies now prevailing on those territories or parts of them. The indigenous people of the region before the invasion of foreign countries, before the colonization, the people who are residing in their regional area, still they are continued with their heritage, with their culture, with their language. They are called the indigenous people. The indigenous term was first used by the Europeans to differentiate from indigenous peoples of the America from the European settlers of the America and sub-Saharan people. So it was used by the Europeans to differentiate from the indigenous people of the America and the settlers from Europe and sub-Saharan Africa. The people are usually described as indigenous. Those people who are maintain their traditions or other aspects of any early culture that is associated with the first inhabitants of a given region. In a given region, the people who are inhabitant to the region from so many centuries, still they are continuing their inhabitant. They are continuing their language. They are following their tradition. They are following their heritage. They are called the indigenous people. What is indigenous language? The language spoken by the native of the indigenous people. The indigenous language is a language that is native to a region and spoken by the indigenous people. The indigenous languages are not only methods of communication. The language is not only for the communication. It is also expression of their culture. The language is an expression of the heritage. It is the culmination of all those living aspects. The knowledge system which is there among the people, which is expressed by their language. So the language is promoting their knowledge system, promoting their culture, promoting their heritage, promoting their economic importance of their heritage beyond the communication. The language is not only for the communication, it will also promote the living aspects in the side of education, economics, so on. But since so many years, the indigenous languages are disappearing for various reasons. The reasons are the mass extinction of entire speakers of the communities by natural disasters or so many other reasons. When a community speaking a particular language which is not documented, which is not protected or not transmitted to the further generations, while the extinction of those community, because of the extinction of the community, the language of that community has been disappeared, vanished from the globe. And genocides means so many calamities has been happened in the globe. The aging communities in which the language is not passed on, oppressive language planning policies, the governments has followed a particular language planning because of that planning also, so many languages will disappear. How they disappear, we will see in the further video, further slides. They actively seek to eradicate languages from a linguistically distinct community that originated in an area. So the speakers who are restricted to diffuse, who are restricted to communicate their language, transmit their language. These are some of the reasons to disappearing the languages. Why we should protect, why we should give importance to the indigenous languages? The indigenous people are not only leaders in protecting the environment. Their language is not only for the communication, we have already discussed that. Their language, their culture, their tradition has a lot of economic importance, lot of traditional prominence, lot of cultural importance. If the language disappears, all these great things will also disappear with the language. So, we have to protect them. They are useful for the sustainable development of the society. They are useful for the peaceful world, peaceful living of the world. The indigenous languages also promote local cultures, customs and values which have endured from thousands of years. So that the IDIL has been proclaimed to help to promote and protect indigenous languages and to improve the lives of the speakers of those indigenous languages, to contribute to develop those languages. Because of those languages, their culture, their knowledge, their economic importance of their heritage will be protected, which will be useful for the sustainable development of the societies, sustainable development of the world, sustainable development of the globe. It will helpful for the eradication of the pollution. It will helpful for the eradication of so many hurdles we are facing now. You see here, this is the heritage which has an economic importance of the indigenous people. How they make baskets with a pollution free, with low economic effort, and they are making the mats, they are making the pottery. We will get this pot. In those days, before 5 to 10 years back, we used to get this pot for 10 rupees. Now we are getting with 100 or 150 rupees. But in so many cities, because besides these pots, they are using the plastic pots which are polluted, causing pollution to the society. Because of the plastic pots, we are now not using this mud pots. So economically, we are not encouraging the people of potters, and we are also causing pollution to the society by using those plastic pots. You see, these are the houses built by the mud. You see, the skills of those indigenous people are able to build the houses with the mud without causing impact on the society, without causing pollution to the society, and with a low economic effort, with a low or no cost. They have built the houses, they have built all those things, so many things. So this is the heritage, this is the culture, this is the prominence, greatness of the indigenous people. So to protect all these things, we have to protect the indigenous languages. We have to give importance to the indigenous culture and heritage. There are according to the ethnologists, an annual publication of the world languages, there are 7,100 living languages are there in the world, but many of them, 90% of the languages has been spoken by less than 1 lakh people. So many small languages are there, which are not recognized by the government, which are not taken any effort to develop their languages. In India, there were more than 780 languages are there. As per the Survey of India, the People's Linguistic Survey of India, there are 780 languages are there, in which 220 languages have been died in last 50 years, and 197 of other languages are in danger, categorized as the endangered languages by the UNESCO, listed in the list of endangered languages of UNESCO. Despite in India's culture, geographical and linguistic diversity, the India has recognized the 22 languages as official languages, which are used for the administration. The 22 languages only are the instruction languages for the education. So what about the other languages among the 780 languages? What about their education? What about their communication with the government? What about their administration? The people which are beyond the 22 languages, other than 22 languages, they are bound to be follow the 22 languages for their education, for their communication with the government, to seek the education, to go to the court, to go to the government offices. They are bound to follow the one among the 22 languages. Because of this, the people forcibly leave their language and they have to opt for the any of the language in these 22 languages. This is also the reason, one among the reasons of the government policy leads to the death of the language, leads to the causing danger to the language, other languages. The UNESCO has also having a global plan. It has developed a global plan for the development of indigenous languages. The plan includes to identify regional priorities, including strategic objectives, outcomes, outputs, domains of change, as well as a regional flagship and pilot projects for the international decade. The UNESCO has a global action plan for the protection and documentation of the regional languages. It also raises awareness on the importance of indigenous languages, linguistic diversity and multilingualism for the sustainable development. It forged the partnership among various stakeholders for the establishment of a regional network of partners, national committees and focal points for the decade. In this decade, the UNESCO has so many action plans for the protection, for the documentation, dissemination and developing the indigenous languages. The main objectives of this decade are protection and promotion of indigenous languages, improving the quality of life of speakers of indigenous languages, contributing to the objectives established in the United Nations Declaration on the Right of the Indigenous People, contributing to the global set out of the 2030 agenda for the sustainable development. So reinforcing the numerous normative instructions adopted by the international community that include specific provisions to promote and protect the languages. The UN has designed so many activities, so many programs, so many projects, and it also has the collaboration with the industries, institutions, and the societies to protect, promote, contribute to the indigenous languages. The Language Assembly of First Nations Language Forum report, it has submitted a report, the Language Forum report, to encourage to give an opportunity to learn. It has given its report to create space for the dialogue and best practice and strategies, and to support language teachers and knowledge keepers through proper compensation ensuing comparable wages. It is given so many opportunities to build capacity and develop the expertise with the language experts, finding ways also to teach those urban areas. By the inclusion of the urban people, by involving the teachers, by involving the stakeholders, by involving the language expertise, by culmination all these people, all these societies, it has given, it has planned so many activities for the protection of the indigenous languages. Now I am proud to say that the SRR College Telugu Department has been organized a national seminar on documentation and dissemination of linguistic, literary and cultural heritage with the financial assistance of Telangana Higher Education Council, which is 5 years before the proclamation of this IDIL. The IDIL, International Decade of Indigenous Languages, has been proclaimed in 2000. It is the action plan taken in 2000, and it is declared either 2022 to 32 as the Indigenous Decade. But before 5 years of that, in 2017, the Telugu department already has organized a national seminar on documentation and dissemination of these languages and their culture and this heritage. By this, you imagine that how the Telugu department is 5 years ahead from the action plans taken by the UN, UNESCO, government and so on. So thanking you for watching this video. In further videos, I will give some more inputs regarding the IDIL. Thank you